Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm hoping everyone can see my slides that I've printed up. At the top of the slides, there's a URL. There's a portion here that I'm encouraging people who are joining us for this session to play along with me, go along with me as they're watching these slides. There's some interactive portions to this that I'm hoping people will be able to take advantage of. If not, we can work around that, but it might be nice to get your opinion on some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about here. So before I get too far into this, I want to make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to what's the difference between a skill and a trait. So I'm curious for your opinion on whether this particular item, estimation, is estimation a skill or is estimation a trait, in your opinion? And I'm going to give people a minute or two here to fill in this information. And I can see the responses starting to come in now. Thank you very much for that. Give it another minute or so as this comes in. Thank you very much. So it looks like it's split about 50-50 here for estimation, whether it's a skill or a trait. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next slide now. Thank you very much for that. Courageous. Courageous is another term here. And give people a second here to determine whether courageous is a skill or a trait. Well, so far it's splitting about 50-50 again, 1 and 1. Oh, it's starting to lean more heavily towards traits in this case. Still a couple for skills. Okay. A little bit higher towards trait here. All right, so let's try the next one. There, planning. Is planning a skill or is planning a trait? Looks like most people here are thinking it's a skill. Thank you very much for participating. Well, looks like most people are thinking this is a skill. Excellent. Let's go on to the next one. Facilitation. Is facilitation a skill or is facilitation a trait? Mostly a skill here. It's good, except for that first question. Looks like most people are coalescing around the same answer. That's great. Very last one here. Decisive or decisiveness. Is that a skill or a trait? This one's splitting about 50-50 so far. Let's see if that continues. Leaning a little bit heavier a little bit more on the trait side. Thank you again everyone who is participating in this. This is great. Okay, leaning a little bit more towards trait here. Okay, well so I'm now showing, these are my opinions on whether they're a skill or a trait, and I'll give you a little bit of background around how I define the two and talk a little bit about why that's important. So a trait is more intrinsic. It's more part of who you are. I won't say essentially what you're born with, but these sort of traits are things that are picked up and embedded early on, and they are really just part of who you are, whereas skills are things that are learned, that they can be picked up at a later date. And now, not to say that things like being courageous or decisive, if you are not that intrinsically, you can't become more courageous or decisive, but there's a benefit to having that trait initially and then being able to build upon it. Whereas things like being good at estimation, being good at planning, being good at facilitation, those items, they can just be picked up. Obviously, you need to have the right type of training. You need to have a certain level of intelligence to pick those things up, but they are things that can be added on later, whereas traits are something that are just naturally part of who you are. And the reason I'm talking about this is really an important idea as we're looking at the sort of work that's going to be happening now and in the future. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is, and start with this, the difference between a skill and a trait, is one of the activities that I do as a professional Scrum trainer in our Scrum Master class, our PSM1 class. There is an exercise we do that talks about what are the different skills and traits that make for a good Scrum Master. And we hold it near the end of the class, and it's always very interesting to see the lists of skills and traits that students create after spending a couple of days with a trainer talking about what makes a good Scrum Master. And one of the things that I do at the end of every one of these sessions is, after they've given me a big list of the various skills and traits they think would make for a good Scrum Master, I then ask the students, it's like, so is this the sort of things that when you're looking for good Scrum Masters that you look for? And what the response I often receive from my students are, no, these are not the sort of things that we look for. The sort of things they look for are very different than what now they understand are the skills and traits that make for a good Scrum Master. And I agree with them that often the role is misunderstood and people are looking for different things than what they really need to have. And I'm going to give you some examples of things that I've seen in an actual job description. So these are words from an actual wanted Scrum Master job description. Develop large-scale project plans. Schedule meetings to provide status. Responsible for genuine coordination, status reporting, and stability of project-oriented work. Ensure projects delivered on time, within budget, adhered to high quality standards. Direct and monitors work effort. Now, from what I know about the Scrum Master role, these are not the things that you're looking for in a Scrum Master. Really, they're just horrible, horrible representations of what the Scrum Master role is. And it leads me to believe, why do we do this? Why do our organizations create these horrible job descriptions? And what I believe the reasoning behind this is that a lot of our organizations right now still have this Taylorist mindset. They still believe that we're working in factories. I showed you here a picture from an early factory, early 20th century, where you hired people, basically, you hired them off the farm, you brought them into a factory, they were doing very simple rudimentary skills, and it was this concept of manufacturing that drove a lot of our business thinking, and that business thinking still stands today. where people are seen as fungible resources. We can take any, and I apologize for the bad language here, we can take any idiot off the farm, put them behind a desk, teach them some very simple skills, and then just get them to produce things. And we're just teaching them skills, right? Just move this box from here to here and you're good to go. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, this is not where we are right now. We are not doing simple automated tasks anymore. Simple automated tasks in a working environment, if you're working with computers, have all been automated. We're doing much more collaborative work. We're not moving boxes around. We are doing thinking activities, and thinking activities are very, very different than the work that our parents or our parents' parents were doing when they were being managed under this old style, this Taylorist style of management. And when I talk about this difference between the types of work, I often rely upon the Kneffen framework. Hopefully you're familiar with this. It's this idea of categorizing different types of problems. And he breaks these problems down to these 4 different categories: obvious, complicated, complex, and chaotic. And the work that our parents and grandparents did would live more in the obvious and complicated section, where we know a lot of what the problem we're trying to solve. There's not a lot of unknown, so we just need to be told what to do and we can execute on it. But in today's world, those problems, again, if you're working with a keyboard, if you're working with a computer, any problem you're solving with a keyboard and a computer, if they're obvious or complicated, that's just automation. We've created a program to do all of that. The work that we actually do is in the complex area. And in those complex areas, the problems are unknown. We need to have, we need to use our brain. We need to work together. We need to be, we need a different type of problem-solving skills and different types of attributes to help with these new environments that we're in. Now, because we are in a new world, we're not in that Taylorist society. We're in an area that there are more unknowns than knowns. We're having to solve more problems on our own than we were. We're having to work with others more than we did before, because the problems that we're solving aren't things that just one person can do. So we are now in this new world. So being in this new world, I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell me what traits do you think would be important considering this new way of working. And I'm going to invite you again to just enter into the website with the link that I sent you. Just enter in some traits that you think might be valuable. Ah, yes, picked up that one from earlier. Courage, being courageous, taking risks, because there's a lot of unknowns. That's definitely one of the sort of traits that you'll have to bring into your environment to allow you to deal with this new world. I'd like to give people just another minute or two here. Maybe they'd like to share some other traits that they think that might be useful for this new environment. Yes, excellent. Thank you. Some very good. Optimistic. That's one of my favorites. I'm an optimist. These are excellent, excellent words. Thank you very much. These are excellent. Thank you very much, people. Good. Now I'm going to talk about 3 in this presentation, 3 that are near and dear to my heart. And I haven't seen, I'm looking here, I haven't seen the 3 in here, which is good, because these are ones that maybe you hadn't thought about. But that's a really great list of items that you include here. Thank you very much. Excellent. So I'm going to talk about three that I think are really important. First one I'm going to talk about is friendliness. Your ability to work with others. I read a wonderful book a while ago, recommend it highly to everybody, called Humankind by Rutger Brogman. Dutch name, I always struggle with Dutch names. Wonderful book that talked about the trait, one of the things he talked about is the trait of friendliness, and how this trait of friendliness really helped our ancestors survive. And in one section in his book, he talks about Neanderthals. And on paper, when you compare Neanderthals to Homo sapiens, the Neanderthal had attributes that on paper made them look like they were a better species. They had larger brains, they were physically stronger, they had a lot of attributes that you would have thought, if you were comparing them to Homo sapiens, you thought, well, this is the winner. These are the ones that are going to thrive. And as we all know, they didn't. They died out, and it was the Homo sapiens that ended up taking over. And the advantage that the Homo sapiens had was their ability to work together, their friendliness. And it was that ability to coordinate amongst themselves and to get along and to not compete and to pass things down from generation to generation that allowed Homo sapiens to flourish. Now, you can imagine if you're in an environment where you have to rely upon others to succeed, this trait of friendliness is going to allow you to achieve better things, because you can't do them on your own. You need the help of others. And I think we probably all have had experience where we've worked in an environment where if I have to deal with someone who is naturally friendly, or I have to deal with someone who is naturally unpleasant, I like to work with the person who is friendly. And not only do I like to work with them, but I will go above and beyond, and I will help them more. And there's a bit of a virtuous cycle here, is if I like friendly people and I'm friendly myself, I will help them, they will help me, and we will build on each other's successes, which would allow us both to thrive. Whereas people who are unfriendly, who don't get along with each other, they have to rely upon their own ability. And in 21st century, that's not enough. So I'd like to ask you to take a moment here to think. If you were putting together a job description and you were trying to attract people who had this trait of friendliness, what would you put in that job description to try to attract people, other than just putting wanted friendly people? What sort of sentence, what sort of thing could you put in to try to encourage or attract someone who has this friendliness trait to them to come and join your team? So I'm going to give you a second or two to think about that. I'll have a coffee. It's all anonymous, don't be shy. Thank you very much. I agree. The person who put down interactive, if you're trying to attract people who are friendly, who like being around other people, saying that you've got an interactive environment is something that might attract them. Thank you very much for that one, buddies. Thank you very much for those. Those took a little while. There's a bit of a delay here, so thank you very much for the patience as your fellow attendees put in these answers and shared them. I'd be much more excited to respond to a job ad that had items like this in it than one that talked about managing project plans and checking people's work, which is not what you're looking for from a Scrum Master. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on now and talk about another trait that you might want to look for in this new world of work. And that trait is curiosity. This strong desire to know and learn. And it is one of the things that really separates. It's always wonderful to see children. For people there who are parents who have children, that inherent curiosity that we have as young children, where the entire world is new to us. And as parents, you have to encourage that curiosity for your children to grow and learn and explore the world around them. And you want to really get them to embrace learning and knowledge. And that thing that you do as a parent with your children to help them learn and grow is an important trait to have as you become an adult. Because unlike in past ages, where again, most of what we were doing from a work perspective was already known. You would come in, you would do the same thing day after day after day. In this new world of work, there are unknowns that you're dealing with every single day. You are not going to be dealing with the same problems. Again, if you're working with a keyboard and a mouse and in a computer, if there's something that you're doing day after day after day and it's not new, then that's a program that someone's going to write and you're not going to be doing that work anymore. So you have to have this trait of, I want to learn something about that, because you're going to be spending most of your day at work learning something new. So this trait is such an important piece, and it always makes me sad that I know when people are growing up as children, you work curious, and then they get into a workplace, and some negative workplaces will drive that curiosity out of people. It's like, no, don't ask questions. We don't want you asking questions. Just sit and do your work. And we should, if you're a leader or a manager, you should be encouraging or embracing people to be curious and to take advantage of that. So, as before, I would like to invite you to think about, if we were trying to write a job ad, if we were trying to put words into that job ad to attract people who are curious, what would we put in that? Thank you very much. Inquisitive, ask the right question. Excellent. I'm exercising my curiosity right now as I'm waiting to see what people are going to put in here. Working in a challenging environment. That's good. That's a nice it's a nice way of framing it to get people to want to come and learn more. Yeah, stupid questions are welcome here. I like that. I always say there's no such thing as a stupid question. Questions are good. Oh, thank you very much for that. Yeah, some excellent, excellent quotes there. I'm going to move on to my last trait, but if you want to keep adding stuff in here, that's perfectly acceptable. The last trait I'd like to talk about is humility. And humility is this idea of being unassuming in your estimation of one's ability. And humility is an interesting trait. Was reading Rutger's book again, that one on humankind, and he pointed out that humans are the only animals that blush, which I thought was an interesting idea. And to talk about the importance of humility, I've got a quote here that I really like. It's from Paul Bear Bryant. He was a famous coach of a football team, a very famous football team in the United States. And his quote here is, if anything goes bad, I did it. If anything goes semi-good, we did it. And if anything goes really good, then you did it. And that's all it really takes to get people to win football games for you. And I really like how that highlights this coach who was, over his long career, was a highly winning coach. So he had a ton of great coaching skills and probably had some excellent traits, and he would win consistently with different people. It wasn't as if he had, this awesome team that stayed with him through his entire career. He was in college football. So as new students would come in, he would find good people and he would coalesce them into this team, and that team would go on to win games. And his quote really highlights his humility played a part in that. It's like, this isn't me doing great things. This is you doing great things. And really highlighting that with the team that he was coaching. Now, why is this important? Well, again, we're dealing with a lot of unknowns in this new world. We're going to be exposed every day to new ideas and things that we haven't dealt with. And if we don't embrace this idea of humility, where I'm not the smartest person in the room, where I may not have the answer to this, if I flip that on its head and I take the opposite stance where I know everything, where I have all the answers, you're going to miss out on finding a solution to something because you've already come to a decision without having all the information that you need to have to solve the problem. And you also tend not to be open to learning. If you already think you're the smartest person in the room, why should I learn anything new? And as I said, in this new working environment that we're living in, there's always something new to learn. So this humility trait becomes really important so you can grow as a human being and acknowledge to yourself that I don't know everything, that I have opportunities to learn from the environment around me, from my coworkers. There's a nice connection between friendliness and humility here that I think is really important. So I want to encourage you to embrace that humility. There's nothing wrong with saying I don't know in this new working environment, because that's just expected as we're dealing with new things. So this is the final time I'm going to ask you to share with me the sort of things that you would put into a job ad if you were trying to attract people who had this humility trait. See the term servant leader here, that ability to serve others is a sign of humility. Willingness to unlearn. Thank you for sharing that. That's very true. It takes a lot of humility to admit that what I might have learned in the past, what I thought to be true, isn't true, and maybe I'm wrong. But again, that is a key thing you need to do if you want to better yourself. Thank you very much for these list of items. These are some great, I would much rather see these in a job description than the ones that I saw before. All right, let's move on. So we're coming to the end of our time together. Just want to leave with you something to think about, some next steps here. So I started early on in this talk talking about the difference between skills and traits and why, and talked about some traits that are important. I did want to reinforce that there's nothing wrong with skills. Skills are important. Being good at planning, having some techniques around estimation, being a good facilitator. Skills are great. The important thing to remember is you can always pick those up. For me, what is really important in this new world of work is having the right traits to make it easier for you to pick up these skills that will help you be successful. Things like friendliness and humility, courage, humility will allow you to pick up those skills much easier. And as we go forward over the next few decades, the skills that we need to be successful, those skills might not even exist today. Who would have thought 10 years ago that programming drones was going to be a skill that was going to be in high demand? Artificial intelligence and being able to write the AI that now drives a lot of our businesses. 10 years ago, who would have known that was a sort of a skill? But it's the traits that I talked about that are going to allow you to pick up the skills to be successful. So think about the traits that you have and think the ones that your coworkers have to see if there's anything that you can build on and anything that you can use to be successful. And with that, I'd like to wrap this part of the presentation up. We should still have about, I think, 10 minutes left.